Okay. So have you ever noticed like how some people just, they glide through like social situations
Mm-hmm.
and they just make connections so easily,
Yeah.
you know? But then there's the rest of us
Right.
who are like battling, sweaty palms and just like overthinking every word.
Oh, yeah,
I'm definitely in that second camp.
for sure.
So for this deep dive, we are tackling a topic that can be surprisingly tricky.
Okay.
Um, the art of small talk.
I like it.
We've got a fascinating episode from the American English Bot podcast as our source material.
Okay.
And we're going to break down like the science, the strategy,
Cool.
and hopefully help all of us feel, a lot more confident the next time we're stuck making conversation with a stranger.
Yeah, I think that's something everybody struggles with
Right.
at one point or another in their lives, for sure. I mean, I
Yeah,
know I do.
for sure. One thing I thought was really intriguing about this source is how they reframe small talk.
Okay.
It's not just about, avoiding awkward silences.
It's about this thing they call social lubrication.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
I love a good analogy.
Yeah.
But break that down for me.
Sure.
Why is social lubrication like such an apt description for small talk?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
When you're meeting someone for the first time,
Yeah,
there's a certain amount of friction, right?
totally.
You don't know each other. You're not sure what to talk about.
Yeah.
Small talk kind of eases that tension,
Okay.
creates a sense of familiarity, and allows the interaction to kind of flow more smoothly.
I see.
It's like oiling the gears
Okay.
of social interaction.
So small talk is less about the content
Right.
and more about creating that connection,
Yes,
that shared experience.
Yeah, and that connection.
Yeah.
However superficial it might seem, can have a ripple effect.
Okay.
Studies have shown that even like brief positive interactions with
yeah.
strangers can boost our mood, reduce stress, and even increase our sense of belonging.
Wow. So it's not just about being polite. It's actually good for our well-being.
Yeah.
That's definitely a new perspective.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, knowing the why is one thing.
Right.
But the how is often the bigger challenge.
Absolutely. And American English Bot offers some like really practical tips
Okay.
to help us navigate those tricky small talk moments.
Okay.
They start with the basics, emphasizing the importance of a genuine smile
Okay.
and simple icebreakers.
I've heard that advice a million times.
Yeah.
And I still freeze up.
Right.
So what are some icebreakers that actually work without sounding cheesy?
The key is to observe your surroundings
Okay.
and find something relevant to comment on.
Okay.
Like, let's say you're at a conference.
Yeah.
You could say something like, I'm really impressed by the speaker lineup today. What session are you most looking forward to?
Okay.
Or if you're at a coffee shop, you could say, they make a fantastic latte here. Have you tried it?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about finding common ground and starting a conversation naturally. Okay, so that makes sense.
Right.
What happens after the icebreaker?
Right.
How do you keep the conversation going without it feeling forced?
That's where the art of open-ended questions comes in.
Okay.
And I think this is where a lot of people stumble.
Okay.
They ask closed-ended questions
Mm-hmm.
that can be answered with a simple yes or no,
Right.
which can lead to those dreaded dead ends.
Okay, got it. So instead of asking, do you like to travel?
Right.
You'd ask something like, what's the most interesting place you've ever traveled to?
Exactly.
Got it.
You're giving the other person a chance to elaborate, share their experiences, and potentially spark a more engaging discussion.
Yeah.
And while they're talking, you're actively listening.
Okay, hold on. I have to stop you there.
Okay.
I think active listening is one of those phrases people throw around,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really know what it means.
Right.
What does active listening actually look and sound like during a small talk conversation?
It's about engaging all your senses, not just your ears. You're making eye contact, nodding your head,
Okay.
using verbal cues to show that you're following along.
Right.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Research shows that when we use specific verbal affirmations, it actually encourages the other person to keep talking
Interesting.
and feel more connected to us.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, that's interesting,
Right.
you could say, I can see why that experience would be so memorable for you.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
I see what you mean. It's about acknowledging their feelings
Yes,
and showing genuine interest.
precisely. And when you do that, You create a space where people feel heard and valued,
Yeah.
which can lead to more meaningful interactions.
So we've got our icebreakers. We're asking open-ended questions. We're actively listening.
Yes.
What's next?
Well, the American English Bot podcast emphasizes the importance of finding common ground.
Right.
They give this great example. Imagine you see someone at a networking event wearing a Yankees cap. You could say, "Hey, I'm a big baseball fan too. Are you following the Yankees this season?"
Okay.
It's a natural way to connect with someone based on a shared interest, even if it's something as simple as a baseball team.
That's so much better than just saying, do you like baseball?
Right.
Which feels so generic.
Exactly. And it shows that you're paying attention, you're observant,
Right.
and you're genuinely interested in connecting with the other person on a deeper level.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like I could actually handle a small talk situation without wanting to teleport away.
That's great.
But I have a feeling there's more to it
Oh, yeah.
than just the word we use.
Absolutely. American English Bot doesn't really dive deep into this,
Okay.
but what we haven't touched on yet is the nonverbal side of communication, specifically body language.
Okay, so it's not just what we say, it's how we say it.
Exactly.
But body language can feel so subtle.
It can.
So how do we even begin to, be more aware of it during a conversation?
It's about tuning into those nonverbal cues
Okay.
that we're all sending and receiving,
Right.
often subconsciously.
Okay.
So let's start with eye contact.
Yeah.
It's like the foundation of nonverbal communication.
I can already see where this is going. Don't stare intensely. Got it.
Right.
But what's the sweet spot? How do you make eye contact without making the other person feel like they're under a microscope?
Think of it as a dance, not a staring contest.
Okay.
A good rule of thumb is to maintain eye contact for about 5 seconds,
Okay.
then naturally glance away for a moment before re-engaging.
Got it.
And it's not just about the duration, it's about the quality of the eye contact.
What do you mean by quality of eye contact?
It's about the feeling you convey through your eyes.
Yeah.
Are you looking at the person with genuine interest and warmth, or are you distracted and looking past them?
Right.
Those subtle differences can have a huge impact on how you're perceived.
So it's not about staring them down.
Right.
It's about connecting with them through your gaze. Okay, what about posture? I know I tend to slouch when I'm nervous.
Posture is so important because it conveys so much about our confidence and state of mind.
Okay.
Think about it when you stand or sit up straight. You take up more space. You project a sense of self-assurance.
Right.
Whereas slouching can signal insecurity or disinterest.
Okay, shoulders back, chin up. Got it.
There you go.
What do you do with your hands, though?
Yeah.
I'm a notorious fidgeter,
Yeah.
especially when I'm feeling awkward.
We've all been there, and you're right. Fidgeting can be distracting and make you seem nervous.
Okay.
Try to keep your hands relaxed and visible. Maybe use them to gesture naturally as you speak. Here's a pro tip. If you find yourself fidgeting, try holding something in your hands,
Okay.
like a pen or a coffee cup.
Interesting.
It can help ground you and reduce those nervous movements.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
What about facial expressions?
Sure.
We talked about smiling,
Yeah.
but are there other expressions we should be mindful of during small talk?
Absolutely. Your facial expressions should mirror the tone of the conversation.
Okay.
If someone is sharing something exciting, show your enthusiasm with a bright smile and wide eyes.
Okay.
If they're sharing something more serious, offer a look of concern and empathy.
I see.
It's about showing that you're present and engaged with what they're saying.
This is making me realize how much goes on beneath the surface of a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words we're saying.
Right.
It's about all these nonverbal cues we're sending and receiving.
All the time.
Yeah. And being aware of your own body language is only half the equation.
It is.
The other half is being able to read the body language
Yes.
of the person you're talking to.
Of the other person, exactly.
Okay, that feels like a whole other level of expertise.
It is, but it's a skill you can develop.
How do we get better at reading those subtle cues?
It starts with paying attention.
Okay.
Observe how people hold themselves, how they use their hands, what their facial expressions are telling you. And don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions if you're unsure about something.
So if someone says they're having a good day, but their body language seems tense or closed off,
Right.
it's okay to say something like, "You seem a bit preoccupied. Is everything all right?"
Exactly. It shows that you're attuned to their nonverbal cues and that you genuinely care about how they're feeling.
Okay, this is all great advice. But what about those moments when the conversation just hits a wall? You know, those awkward silences that feel like they last an eternity?
Ah, yes, the dreaded awkward silences.
Yeah.
We've all been there, and they can be so uncomfortable.
They are.
But here's the thing. Those silences are actually quite normal.
Really?
Yeah.
I always feel like it's my responsibility to keep the conversation going no matter what.
It's a common misconception, and it can lead to a lot of unnecessary pressure.
Okay.
Sometimes a brief pause is natural.
Okay.
It allows both parties to process what's been said, gather their thoughts, and prepare for the next topic.
So it's not always a bad thing.
No, it's not.
But what if the silence starts to drag on and it's clear that the other person is feeling uncomfortable?
Right.
What are some strategies that we can use to break the tension?
One approach is to simply acknowledge the silence with a lighthearted comment.
Okay.
You could say something like, well, this is awkward, or it seems we've exhausted that topic.
Right.
It can actually break the tension and create an opening for a new conversation thread.
I like that. It's like you're taking ownership of the silence
Exactly.
and turning it into a shared experience.
And sometimes the best way to break a silence is to simply ask a follow-up question based on something the other person mentioned earlier.
Oh.
It shows that you were listening attentively.
Right.
And that you're genuinely interested in learning more.
Or we could shift gears entirely and introduce a new topic.
Yes.
Maybe we notice something interesting in our surroundings, or a recent news story comes to mind.
Those are all great strategies. The key is to stay calm, avoid getting flustered, and remember that a few seconds of silence isn't the end of the world.
In fact, it might even be a good thing, giving both parties a chance to regroup and recharge.
Precisely. And speaking of recharging,
Yes.
I think it's time for us to move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the mindset behind successful small talk.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about icebreakers, open-ended questions, active listening body language,
Right.
even those awkward silences.
Right?
But, even with all the best techniques in the world,
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest hurdle for a lot of us is the mental game of small talk.
I couldn't agree more. The American English Bot podcast focuses on these practical tips,
Right.
but they don't really address the mindset, which is arguably the most important element.
Yeah, it's like, even if you know all the right things to say, if you're approaching small talk with dread or anxiety, it's going to show.
Absolutely. Our internal state has a huge impact on how we come across to others.
Yeah.
Think about those times when you felt truly confident and at ease in a social setting.
Didn't conversations just seem to flow effortlessly?
Yeah, totally. But how do we cultivate that sense of ease when our instinct is to overthink every word and worry about saying the wrong thing?
Well, one powerful strategy is to reframe our perspective on small talk.
Okay.
Instead of seeing it as an obligation or a performance, what if we viewed it as an opportunity for discovery?
Discovery. You mean like discovering something new about the other person?
Exactly. Every person we encounter has a unique story, a wealth of experiences and perspectives that we can learn from.
Okay.
When we approach small talk with a sense of curiosity, it takes the pressure off of ourselves
Right.
and allows us to be more present and engaged in the conversation.
So instead of thinking, what am I going to say next? We should be thinking, what can I learn from this person?
Precisely. And when you shift your focus from self-promotion to genuine interest, it can actually make you a more engaging conversationalist. People are drawn to those who listen attentively and ask thoughtful questions.
That's interesting. It's funny how counterintuitive that is.
We often think we need to be the most interesting person in the room to make a good impression. But maybe the opposite is true.
It's about connecting with people on a human level, and that starts with curiosity and a willingness to listen.
I love that. But I think for a lot of us, especially those who identify as introverts, putting ourselves out there can be a real challenge.
Yeah, it can be.
Any advice for overcoming that initial hurdle?
Well, one thing that can be helpful is to set small, achievable goals.
Okay.
You don't have to become a social butterfly overnight.
Right.
Start by challenging yourself to initiate one conversation a day, even if it's just a brief exchange with the barista at your coffee shop.
And maybe instead of focusing on the outcome of the conversation, we should focus on the process.
Yeah.
It's about building that social muscle,
Yeah.
one interaction at a time.
Exactly. And remember, progress isn't always linear.
Right.
There will be days when you feel more outgoing and confident, and there will be days when you just want to stay in your pajamas.
Yeah.
The key is to be kind to yourself and celebrate those small wins along the way.
Okay, so for our listener who's been on this deep dive journey with us today, what's the one key takeaway you want them to remember?
I'd say the most important thing is to shift your mindset from fear to curiosity.
Okay.
Embrace small talk as an opportunity to connect with others,
Yeah.
learn something new, and brighten someone's day.
I like that.
Even the briefest interactions can have a positive ripple effect.
And if there's one small action our listener can take after this deep dive, what would you suggest?
I encourage you to pick one technique we've discussed today and try it out in your next social interaction.
Okay.
Maybe it's starting a conversation with a stranger, asking more open-ended questions, or simply paying closer attention to your body language.
Okay.
Notice how it feels, observe the other person's reaction, and most importantly, be kind to yourself throughout the process.
Small talk might not always be easy, but it is a skill we can all cultivate with practice and a little bit of courage. So go out there, spark up a conversation, and see what happens. You might be surprised by the connections you make and the joy you discover in those everyday interactions.
Couldn't agree more.
So we talked about, the icebreakers, the open-ended questions, the active listening body language, even those awkward silences.
Right.
But even with all the best techniques in the world, I think the biggest hurdle for a lot of us is the mental game of small talk.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the American English Bot podcast, they focus so much on the practical tips,
Right.
but they don't really address the mindset,
Yeah.
which is arguably the most important part.
It's even if you know all the right things to say,
Right.
if you're approaching it with dread or anxiety, it's going to show.
Absolutely. Your internal state has a huge impact on how you come across to others.
Right.
Think about those times when you felt truly confident and at ease in a social setting.
Yeah.
Didn't conversations just seem to flow effortlessly?
Totally.
Yeah.
But how do we cultivate that sense of ease when our instinct is to overthink every word and worry about saying the wrong thing?
Well, one powerful strategy is to kind of reframe our perspective on small talk.
Okay.
Instead of seeing it as an obligation or a performance,
Right.
what if we viewed it as an opportunity for discovery?
Discovery. You mean discovering something new about the other person?
Exactly. Every person we encounter has a unique story.
Right.
A wealth of experiences and perspectives that we can learn from.
Yeah.
When we approach small talk with a sense of curiosity, it takes the pressure off of ourselves and allows us to be more present and engaged in the conversation.
So instead of thinking ugh, what am I going to say next?
Right.
We should be thinking, what can I learn from this person?
Exactly. And when you shift your focus from self-promotion to genuine interest,
Okay.
it can actually make you a more engaging conversationalist.
Right.
People are drawn to those who listen attentively and ask thoughtful questions.
It's funny how counterintuitive that is.
It is.
We think we need to be the most interesting person in the room.
Right.
But maybe the opposite is true.
It's about connecting with people on a human level.
Right.
And that starts with curiosity and a willingness to listen.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of us, especially those who identify as introverts, putting ourselves out there can be a real challenge.
It can be.
Any advice for overcoming that initial hurdle?
One thing that can be helpful is to set small, achievable goals.
Oh.
You don't have to become a social butterfly overnight.
Right.
Start by challenging yourself to initiate one conversation a day, even if it's just a brief exchange with the barista at your coffee shop.
And maybe instead of focusing on the outcome of the conversation, we focus on the process.
Exactly.
It's about building that social muscle one interaction at a time.
Exactly. And remember, progress isn't always linear.
Right.
There will be days when you feel more outgoing and confident, and there will be days when you just want to stay in your pajamas.
For sure.
The key is to be kind to yourself and celebrate those small wins along the way.
So for our listeners who've been on this deep dive journey with us today, what's the one key takeaway you want them to remember?
I think the most important thing is to shift your mindset from fear to curiosity.
Okay.
Embrace small talk as an opportunity to connect with others, learn something new, and brighten someone's day.
I like that.
Even the briefest interactions can have a positive ripple effect.
And if there's one small action our listeners can take after listening to this, what would you suggest?
I would encourage you to pick one technique we've discussed today and try it out in your next social interaction.
Okay.
Maybe it's starting a conversation with a stranger, asking more open-ended questions, or simply paying closer attention to your body language.
Okay.
Notice how it feels, observe the other person's reaction, and most importantly, be kind to yourself throughout the process.
Small talk might not always be easy, but it is a skill we can all cultivate with practice and a little bit of courage.
For sure.
So go out there, spark up a conversation, and see what happens.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the connections you make and the joy you discover in those everyday interactions.
All right, so you want to get better at small talk in English?
Sounds like it.
Maybe for work, social events, or just everyday life.
For sure.
Well, today's deep dive is all about giving you the tools to make those interactions smoother, maybe even fun.
I like that.
We've got this awesome source. It's packed with tips and real-life examples.
Oh, cool.
We'll cover everything from networking events and elevators to, like, quick coffee shop encounters.
Nice. So practical stuff.
Exactly, practical stuff.
Now, a lot of people think small talk is just filler.
Yeah, just chit-chat.
Right. But it's so much more than that. It's like the foundation for building rapport.
Oh, interesting.
It can even open doors to like deeper conversations.
I see what you mean. It's like the first step.
Exactly.
In any relationship, really.
Makes sense.
But our source makes it clear that even those simple topics, like the weather or hobbies, they actually serve a bigger purpose.
They do.
They're like the social lubricant.
I like that analogy.
That breaks the ice. And makes those initial interactions more comfortable.
For sure.
So how do we actually become better at this? I mean, knowing it's important is one thing, but actually feeling confident doing it is another.
Totally agree.
The source dives into these essential tips.
Ooh, I'm curious.
I am too. And they start with something so basic.
Okay, let's hear it.
Smiling.
Smiling.
I know, right?
Seems simple.
But they emphasize how powerful it is.
Well, it makes you look more approachable.
Yeah.
Friendly. Like, hey, I'm open to connecting.
Exactly. And there's even research on this. Apparently, smiling releases endorphins.
Interesting.
Making you appear more confident.
So it's win-win.
Totally a win-win.
I like it.
It's like an unspoken invitation to start a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of starting conversations,
okay,
the source talks about openers, icebreakers.
those first few phrases?
Yeah, those little things that get things rolling.
Gotcha.
They suggest things like, let me see. That's a great book you're reading. What's it about? Or, is this your first time at this event? Simple stuff, but it works.
I can see that.
What's smart about those examples is they're open-ended.
Oh, that's key.
It keeps the conversation flowing.
Makes sense.
Like, instead of asking, do you like coffee?
Which is just a yes or no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could ask, what's your go-to coffee order?
I see. You get them talking more?
Exactly. It sparks a real exchange.
Nice.
So how do we move beyond just exchanging pleasantries?
Good question.
How do we, like, spark genuine connection through small talk?
Well, it's all about engaging with what the other person is saying.
Okay.
That's why active listening is so crucial.
More than just hearing the words.
Way more.
You have to show you're engaged.
And interested.
Got it.
So more than just nodding politely.
Okay, more than nodding.
Think about it. Nodding your head.
Okay.
Making eye contact. Even using little phrases like, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Right.
These show you're really listening.
And that you value what they're saying.
Exactly. It builds rapport.
And makes them feel heard.
Which is so important.
For any conversation.
Any conversation.
The source also stresses this idea of finding common ground.
Oh, that's a good one.
They give an example. Someone's wearing a Yankees cap.
Okay.
And you ask if they're a baseball fan.
Simple, but effective.
Right. It's about finding those shared interests.
Even if they seem small,
yeah,
they can make a conversation way more engaging.
But what if you can't find any obvious shared interests?
Good point.
Especially in, like, diverse settings.
You're right. It's not always easy.
So what do you do then?
Well, sometimes it's about being observant.
Okay.
Picking up on subtle cues.
Like what?
Maybe someone mentions a trip they took. And you've been to that same place.
Right.
Or they're carrying a book by an author you love.
Those little things.
They can be great conversation starters.
So we've got the smile, a good opening line.
Check.
We're asking open-ended questions. Listening actively.
Yes.
Looking for common ground.
Absolutely.
Anything else we need to keep in mind?
Well, the source also highlights this.
Okay.
Keep things light and positive.
Oh, that's important.
Right. The goal is to create a pleasant atmosphere.
Yeah, nobody wants negativity right off the bat.
Exactly.
And finally, always have an exit strategy.
A way to get out gracefully.
Right. The source gives this example.
Oh, I like examples.
It was great talking to you. I need to head out, but I hope we get to chat again soon.
That's a good one.
It's polite. It's clear.
Perfect.
Now that we've covered the essentials,
yeah,
let's see how these tips play out in different scenarios.
Okay, I'm ready.
You'll be surprised how small changes can make a big difference.
I bet. Okay, so the source walks us through a few common scenarios.
Perfect. Let's dive in.
The first one is a networking event.
Oh, those can be tough.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's mingling, trying to make connections.
It can be so overwhelming.
The example they give starts simple.
Okay, I like simple.
Hi, I'm Alex. What brings you to this event?
Straightforward.
Yeah.
Open-ended.
No pressure.
Oh, yeah.
In the example, the other person, Sarah, responds.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I work in marketing, and I'm here to connect with other professionals.
Typical networking answer.
Now watch what Alex does next.
Okay.
Instead of launching into their own spiel,
Right.
they pick up on what Sarah said.
Okay.
That's great. Marketing is such a dynamic field. What part of marketing do you specialize in?
Oh, that's good.
They kept the conversation going.
And showed genuine interest.
Exactly. It's more than just exchanging information.
It's about connecting.
Right on.
Okay, what's the next scenario?
The dreaded elevator.
The elevator. Confined space, short interaction.
Awkward silences galore.
I always feel so awkward in elevators.
You too.
What does the example say?
They start with the weather.
The weather. Classic.
Looks like it might rain today. Did you bring an umbrella?
Easy. Relatable.
And neutral. Perfect for a quick chat.
But what if they just say no?
Right. Does the conversation just die?
Not necessarily.
Okay, good.
Even with a short answer, you can keep it going.
How?
Like, fingers crossed. The weather has been so unpredictable lately.
True. True.
Or add a little humor. Well, I guess we'll have to make a run for it.
I like that.
It's about finding those little threads.
To keep things going.
For just a few floors.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the coffee shop?
Ah, the coffee shop.
A bit more relaxed, I'd say.
Definitely.
What do they do in this one?
They use a technique I love.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Starting with a genuine compliment.
Oh, I like that.
Like they notice the other person's drink.
Oh, okay.
And say, that's a unique drink you've got there. What is it?
Not intrusive at all.
Right.
Shows you're paying attention.
And it naturally leads to more conversation.
That's clever.
The other person explains their drink. You ask follow-up questions. Have you ever tried one?
What do you like about it?
It's all about sparking that curiosity.
Exactly.
So we've seen how to apply these tips in different settings.
We have.
But I think it's also helpful to talk about the mistakes we make.
Oh, yeah, the pitfall.
The source covers those too.
Good.
And I think we've all been there.
Definitely.
The first one, talking too much.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
I know, I'm guilty of it.
It's easy to get carried away.
Sure, especially when you're nervous.
Or excited.
Exactly.
But remember, small talk is a two-way street.
Right, right.
It's about finding that balance.
Between sharing and listening.
You got it.
So instead of just talking about ourselves, we should try to draw the other person out.
Ask questions. Listen to their answers.
Show genuine interest.
People love to talk about themselves.
Give them the space to do so.
Exactly.
Another mistake, interrupting.
Oh, I hate when people do that.
Me too, but I catch myself doing it sometimes.
It happens.
We get excited about a topic.
We jump in.
But it's important to let them finish.
It shows respect.
It ties back to active listening.
Absolutely.
Really focusing on what they're saying.
And responding thoughtfully.
The source also mentions sensitive topics.
Ooh, yeah.
Like politics or religion.
Not for casual conversation.
Especially in casual settings.
Unless you know the person well.
Right, and you're confident and it'll be respectful.
It's best to stick to lighter topics.
Okay, now this next one is my personal struggle.
Hit me with it.
Remembering names.
The name game.
It's so embarrassing to forget someone's name right after you meet them.
I know the feeling.
What's the secret?
The source says repetition.
Repetition.
When you meet someone, make an effort to repeat their name.
Like, nice to meet you, Sarah.
Exactly.
So, Sarah, what do you do for work?
Hearing it again helps it stick.
So simple, yet I never thought of it.
It works?
Any other memory tricks?
You could try associating their name with something memorable.
Like what?
Maybe they have a unique hairstyle. Or their name reminds you of a celebrity.
Create those mental connections.
It can help you recall their name later.
I'm going to try that. That's brilliant.
I hope it helps.
Now, the source has this whole section for language learners.
Oh, that's great.
Small talk can be extra challenging when English isn't your first language.
Definitely adds another layer of complexity.
This section acknowledges those challenges.
That's good.
And offers some really helpful advice.
Like what?
They start with memorizing common phrases.
Oh, that's smart.
Like, how's your day going? Or, what do you do for work?
It's like having a script.
Yeah, until you feel more comfortable improvising.
It takes the pressure off.
But wouldn't that sound robotic?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's more about having those go-to phrases ready.
In your back pocket.
Yeah, and as you get more confident,
you can branch out.
Use more spontaneous language.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else do they suggest?
They talk about using fillers.
Fillers?
Yeah, like, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Let me think about that for a moment.
Gives you time to think.
It takes the pressure off.
It's natural.
Even native speakers use them.
All the time.
It's part of conversation.
Absolutely.
And finally, this is crucial advice.
Okay, what is it?
Don't worry about mistakes.
Oh, that's so important.
Especially for language learners.
It's easy to get caught up in trying to be perfect.
But that holds you back.
From speaking confidently.
People care more about connecting than judging your grammar.
That's so true.
It's about the effort you're making.
The willingness to communicate.
So reassuring to hear that.
I know, right?
So we've covered a lot.
We have.
From the importance of small talk to practical tips.
Real-life examples.
Common mistakes.
Even advice for language learners.
But before we wrap up,
one more thing.
I want to touch on body language.
Oh, body language. That's huge.
The source emphasizes this too.
It's so important.
It conveys more than words alone.
Sometimes.
They talk about eye contact, open posture,
right,
using appropriate gestures.
It's about being present.
Not just physically, but mentally.
Engaged in the conversation.
We might not always be conscious of it.
So it's good to be reminded.
Paying attention to your body language can make you a more effective communicator.
No doubt about it.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive, but before we sign off, I want to leave you with a little challenge. So now that you have all these tools, why not put them into practice?
I like that.
It's one thing to learn about small talk, but another to actually go out and use it.
Totally.
So here's the challenge.
Okay, I'm listening.
And initiate one small talk interaction today.
Just one.
It could be with a colleague.
Okay.
The barista at your coffee shop.
Someone at the store.
Anyone, really.
Just try it out.
See how it feels to apply these tips?
In real life.
You might be surprised.
By what?
How much more confident you feel.
Oh, I bet.
It makes me think of the butterfly effect.
Butterfly effect.
Even a small chat could lead to unexpected paths.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's fascinating.
The ripple effect of small talk.
Exactly.
It's kind of cool to think about.
You never know where a conversation might lead.
You really don't.
It could be a new friendship.
A business opportunity.
Or just a moment of connection.
That brightens your day.
So go out there and be brave.
Start those conversations.
See what happens.
We're rooting for you.
Let us know how it goes.
We're curious.
Until next time, happy chatting.
Keep practicing.
Keep learning.
Keep connecting.
And keep diving deep.